So I was talking to a teenager recently who's kind of just struggling at life. Now, when a teenager struggles, just like any other human being at any other age, our struggles will produce problems. And these problems tend to get a lot of attention. Maybe there's something they're doing with behavior, something they're doing with substances. Maybe they seem depressed, disconnected. There's lots of types of behaviors that come up when a human being is struggling. It's no different than a teenager. When we grow up and become adults, we tend to cope differently with life struggles. But for the teenager, it tends to come up with maybe bad attitudes, maybe they experiment with drugs, maybe they do things to hurt themselves, maybe they isolate themselves. And it seems that these X's down here, those are the huge problems. Really, those are just like the results of what's really happening. So if you look at this page, basically these boxes, this whole big rectangle with the boxes, represent the teenager's entire life. I asked this teenager, I said, tell me where you're at and what you are doing when you feel most happy. And he said, when I am at home by myself gaming, I feel happy. And I filled in this square and I was like, okay, so here's an area of your life where you feel happy. Because ultimately, in asking this teenager what they want, they said, I want to be happy with what I'm doing with my life, which is a great answer. I think that's what most humans want. We just want to be happy with what we are doing. So I asked if there's anywhere else in life where he feels kind of like he's happy. And he said, well, when I'm with my friend, I feel good about that. I was like, well, how often is that? And so, well, it's not very often. We used to hang out a lot when we were younger and spend the night with each other. And as we all know, when you go from childhood to the teenage years, life and the schedule changes, and it's really hard to have friendships. So he has a little bit of activity over here with friends, but not a whole lot. And so I was talking to him about gaming, because this is the one area in his life where he feels like he likes who he is. And we talked about how he likes gaming and he understands the game and he knows how to play it and how to win it. And so we talked about how life is like a big game. And that became the focus of why I drew this diagram. Is we talked about how life is like a game, but you've got to know how to play it. And I asked him, so if you have this one area of your life that's filled in, what if you got a lot more of this in your life, where you have things in your life where you're feeling really good about who you are, you're enjoying your life, you're enjoying your surrounding and the people in it? Like, how would that feel if you got a lot more of your life looking like that? And of course he said that would feel good. Notice what we're not talking about is this stuff. Although these things, these problems, these behaviors are certainly a threat to a person's life, the person that doesn't have a lot of this in their life will end up with a lot of this in their life. So that's why in our conversations, we're focusing on how to win the game, because life must be fulfilling. It's got to have components like happiness and love and meaning. If it doesn't, this stuff down here at the bottom begins to happen, but it's because the absence of what life is made for. What we tend to do as leaders, whether it's school leaders, parental leaders, teachers, we tend to almost overreact to all of this stuff. And it's not that we certainly should do something with those things and put up boundaries and basically protect the teenager from doing things that harm themselves. But what really needs to be done is how do we create this stuff? So I put it into his corner. I said, listen, your life is a game. You have to figure out the cheat code. Like, you need to figure this out. This is your life. You're a teenager. You're really a young man. This is up to you to start figuring out. And so there's a couple of things that we talked about. And one thing had to do with relationships and how he can develop better relationships by letting people help him. And so there's two action steps I gave him with that. One is to ask people to help you with something if you need help. And secondly, to ask people if you can help them. Because asking people for help is a way of building relationship. So it's not really about getting help, it's about building relationship. Because when relationships get better, our life gets to be more of this. Second thing we talked about was getting a job. Instead of having time in his life where he's just existing, if he were to get a job where he's out doing something with people, he's accomplishing something, that enables him to feel more like he feels when he's in the game. And so the whole point of the conversation was, here's this one time in your life, this one space where you feel good about life and who you are. We can learn to cultivate that in several other areas of our life. And so notice, probably the most important component, the goal is not for this young person to wake up and not do these things. The goal is to find things to do in life to create these things, because that's life-changing. This is the same battle, honestly, we have as adults. It's no different. The teenage time in life really isn't very different than the adult season in life. So I hope this is helpful. We'll see how he comes back when we have our next conversation, because he's looking to see if he can find a way to get a job for this summer. And that'll be interesting to see what happens. So if you have a teenager who's struggling with something, as a parent, it's certainly so scary to see all this stuff down here going on. It's very scary. But what really needs to happen is the good stuff beginning to be cultivated. There's got to be a space for it to happen in a person's life. And when a person's a teenager, I strongly encourage parents to help them take ownership in how to cultivate some of these experiences that will help their life have more meaning and more fun and more fulfillment. So I hope that's helpful.